Hi everyone, this is Jim. Welcome to this Blitz chess postmortem video. This is a postmortem of my Blitz chess game number 147. I was black here, and we went into the French defense. e4, e6, and my opponent played the rare move f4. But not unknown to the opening book, and I played one of the main replies here. You can play c5, transposing into a, what would that be? That would be like a Sicilian. This would be like a Grand Prix attack against the Sicilian with c5. Or you play d5 and stay in French lines. And my opponent played e5, the main move here. So we are following a book line. It's not the most popular. You can see the engine thinks that black is slightly better in this opening, so I suppose that's why it's not so popular these days. But it looks like it's playable, has been played before. And my opponent is playing all the normal moves here. Knight f3, knight c6. And c3 is the main reply on move 5 here. And I played, oh, I'm sorry, no, white played c3 here, the main move. It's here. I was thinking f6 is the main reply here to directly undermine the center before d5 happens, d4 rather. I play knight ge7, which is okay according to the engine. Knight h6 is also aligned, bishop e7. So it looks like black has a wide variety of choices here, although I kind of like this f6 idea, just going after the center immediately, not letting it stay there unchallenged. But after this, and then d4, we're out of the opening book, so there were no more games to look at there. So the game continues. I think these are normal moves. Takes, and black is maintaining an advantage here, and probably the way to keep it is knight f5. I play the move h5. I wanted to play knight f5, and I didn't like the move g4. So h5 was a bit of preparation for knight f5. But if you look at this with the engine, it says you don't really need that preparation. You can just play h5 right away, and if he plays g4 to kick the knight, you have a good square on h4. And also said you could have thrown in bishop b4 check. And if there's a trade here, it brings your queen out with check. It's an unusual position. I don't know if I would have thought of this, but it's a way to play that maintains a pretty nice advantage for black. So the way I play, maybe I'm just being a little bit too cautious with this h5 move. And now the advantage, my advantage more or less disappears. It's in the range of about even. And after the exchange, I guess the problem with this transaction is I give up a knight, which is a decent piece in this structure, and he gives up a bishop. But the bishop that I have left is kind of a sad piece. It doesn't have a lot of squares. So it's not like I've lost or given white any big advantage, but we're still in the range of about even here. But probably best not. It would have been better to find some other line than to give up that knight. And so the game continues. I'm thinking about harassing his bishop here, and he plays this move b3, and I have some little edge along here maybe. But no, it goes back to even. So it's just wavering around even pretty much through all of this sequence. So it means we're both finding good moves here. It's interesting. So the engine really prefers for me to take on c1 and let his bishop. I guess if I take, then his bishop is misplaced. What I did was just a developing move, bishop e7, which you see was also an option. And then he takes, and now it's displaced my bishop. So a little nuance there, but it probably would have been slightly better for me to take. And but there's nothing much going on here. And when he decides, when my opponent decides to trade queens, maybe white could have been a little more aggressive here with a move like knight to a4, attacking my queen, or rook to c1. So this trade of queens actually seems to favor black. And that was pretty much forced. I was in check, and I had to take the queen off. And then king d7 was a good choice, just getting off the back rank so the rook can come out, and then the king is more active in the center. We're heading towards the endgame here, so you don't need to castle for protection of the king. And now, yeah, the engine did not approve of this trading of rooks here. So rook b8, hitting the knight is an idea here. This rook c8 just lets him trade and wastes another tempo for me. And then he grabs the bishop, which I didn't think was particularly good. And now black has a slight edge now because that bishop wasn't doing anything, and his knight was, my opponent's knight was reasonably active. So no need to trade it for a bishop. Okay, so black has an edge, but yet I went on to lose this endgame. Not to give the answer away, but you've seen the game already. So where did I go wrong? So in fact, after this move, it says I have pretty good. This I think was my best winning chance in the game. So knight c2 is a line that more or less forces the exchange of the bishops. It doesn't really make sense for this bishop to retreat. I would just get this good post. I would just get this good post for my bishop, and also I'm threatening to grab a pawn. So bishop takes, king takes, and then knight to e2 to defend the pawn. Knight a2, I'm just going to take the pawn. Oh, the engine is liking knight a2. Isn't that weird? Well, let's look at knight e2 first. Knight e2, defending the pawn. And then king d7, just coming around to attack things. King f2, say. King c6. And where's the king coming in? The king can go up to g3. The king can try and come around this way. King to b5. And I'm going to mop up these weak pawns over here. King h4. King b4, and he's going to mop up my weak pawns over there. King takes h5. This is really difficult to calculate in a blitz game, I have to say. In a long game, you might be able to calculate a long sequence like this, because it is pretty simple. The kings are just walking around. You just have to count the moves and see who's going to get there first. But in a blitz game, it's tough to calculate this far ahead. You have to rely more on general principles. But I've got a passed pawn. At this point, I think we can stop. Yeah, I have this advantage that I have a passed pawn, and he doesn't yet. He's got to come over here and grab one more pawn before he gets a passed pawn. So I can at least force the loss of a knight, and then hopefully my knight, I can grab some of these other pawns, stop his pawns from queening, and win the game. But so that would have been a way to win if we back up to this point here, starting with knight c2. Now the engine says that black could also try knight a2. No, it doesn't like that anymore. Oh, I'm sorry. Bishop b7 here. Then knight e2 or knight a2. Looks like they both lose. Yeah. It would probably be the same kind of thing. But after knight a2, I could just grab the pawn on d4 as well. So this is winning for black, and I guess in this position you can sort of look at it and say, well, I've got a pretty straight shot to this weak pawn over here. He can't really defend it, and his king can't get over in time to save it. 2, 3. It's funny with if his knight just stays there, that's part of the problem. So if his knight weren't there, it's 1, 2, 3, 4 to attack the pawn, and 1, 2, 3, 4 to defend the pawn. So it has to do not just with the position of the kings, but also with the fact that I'm attacking the pawn, and when his knight goes to defend it, I get a tempo for my king, and it makes his king can't get over to the side anymore with the knight on e2 and my knight guarding the squares e1 and e3, so it blocks his king out. So that's pretty interesting. So yeah, I think this is an instructive position. Let's back up. So when I actually played here, I realized if I moved my knight, he could trade bishops, and I didn't know that would favor me. So I played g5, trying to activate my bishop this way, and now my advantage is gone, and it's an even game. So I haven't lost yet, but I'm on the road. And somehow, well, the engine liked the idea of opening up over here and giving the bishop some squares. So I've got a slight advantage back, probably not a winning advantage at this point. Bishop h4 check was played. What does it say? It says knight d3 check. Again, I guess with the idea of trading bishops. But knight d3 check, king e5, knight, king e3, knight takes e5. What's wrong with knight d3 check? Let's try this. Knight d3 check. What's wrong with king to e3, hitting my knight? Knight takes e5. Oh, this is interesting. I can sack the knight, And he takes the bishop. And then I can escape with check. That's pretty clever. Let's back up. So here, knight here check, and if the king goes to that square, then I have knight takes e5, because after bishop takes bishop I have intermezzo check, and then I can take the bishop back, so I pick up a pawn. So after knight d3, where else can he go? He could go to f3, how about? And oh, if he goes to f3, then I just take his bishop. Pretty cool. So really he has to go somewhere that attacks my knight. And if he goes to e2, then I can take on f4. So this is the only move that attacks my knight and defends f4. So yeah, so this is a winning tactic. Possibly winning. It was only rated at half a pawn, but would have been interesting. So I play this move, and still an even game. Here, I take back, knight a2, king up. Right here, I think I'm losing already. It takes the engine a little while to find it, but I'm in trouble after king c6 because he's got this move king e2. And where is my bishop going? I played bishop to g3 and ended up losing. So there's different ways to lose from here. So if I go here, he can just take it. And this is a winning endgame because his king gets over here quicker. I can't defend my pawn, and he can win with this. Yeah, okay, the engine was thinking for a while there was even, but it's not. This is totally winning for white. Okay, so I can't do that. And then I played my bishop to g3, which you can see is a losing move. And I could have tried bishop h4, I suppose. And that just allows knight takes b4 check. Yeah, that's got to be losing too. So, yeah, so in this position, I have to find some other move besides king e2, or king c6. That's a losing move. What's the chess engine recommending? Bishop to d2. So this pawn is, bishop d2 continues to defend this pawn and also threatens this pawn. That's a nice defense. So if the king comes over and attacks the bishop, I can at least grab this pawn. And okay, so pretty tricky position. It seems like I had to find the precise move here, and I didn't find it. And then it's all downhill from here. He plays king c6. I played king after king c6. Yeah, I had to find the precise move here. I played king c6. He went king to e2, attacking my bishop. I went to g3, counterattacking the pawn, but he can take this pawn with check. I attack his knight. The knight goes to d3, defending the pawn, and also keeping my king out of this square. So a nice play with the knight. And the thing about this endgame is I've got all of my pawns on the light squares, which I want because I've got a dark squared bishop and it has a lot of freedom of movement. And his pawns are on dark squares, so they're targets for my bishop. So that's the thing that I want. I can attack his pawns. But the problem is with my pawns on light squares, I can't defend my pawns with the bishop. I have to defend them with the king. And as his knight gets active, and my king is out of play, and he can just mop up these pawns, and you see this in action. So I play bishop h4, just trying to, my bishop was useless here, and I can't win this pawn with my king. Maybe going back with the king is the best try, but all moves lose at this point. And he brings his knight in to attack my pawn, so I go after his pawn. And at this point I resign because after I grab his pawn and he moves his knight here, my bishop has no moves. Here it gets taken, here it gets taken. I'll show you what happens here. Here I attack his pawn, he pushes. I take the pawn, he pushes. I can even take a knight, but he gets a queen. and so my opponent is going to win. And what else can I do? I mean, that's if my pawns can't move. That was if I move the bishop. We're in this position. Yeah, I could take the knight. My king is just too far away to be of any use. He's going to queen. So, and that's bishop g3, e6. Yeah. Other tries. What else could I try? I could try king up. All right, but he just pushes the pawn. He just wins the race. One step behind. So all roads lead to the same position. So in this position, I resigned, and that was it. So hope you guys enjoyed that or learned something, and leave any comments you have in the section below. I'll see you again later. Bye.